Good morning, and thank you so much for being here. Happy Red Ribbon Week 2022. My name is Paul Carganilla. I am the Community Affairs Manager for the Oxnard Police Department. Happy to be able to share some time with you virtually this morning. I'm joined by a couple of our police officers whom I will introduce in just a moment, but I just want to say thank you again for making us part of your Red Ribbon Week 2022. If you have any questions for our police officers that we can answer for you while we're together here virtually, go ahead and leave those in the live chat here on YouTube and let us know where you're tuning in from, which classrooms we have, from which schools, what grades, and just happy to spend the time with you this morning, but want to get to know you a little bit as well. So please say hello and ask any questions that you have. Speaking of getting to know each other, I'd like to introduce the officers that are joining us this morning. Please join me in saying hello to one of our school resource officers, Officer Brandy Roberts, and one of our neighborhood policing team members, Corporal Martin Perez. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us here. And as we kick off this Red Ribbon Week, let's talk a little bit about who you are and what Red Ribbon Week means to you. Officer Roberts, how many years have you been with the department, and what do you do in your role as an SRO?
I've been with Oxnard Police Department for 5 years, and as an SRO, I work at Oxnard High School. My main job is to keep the safety and security of the school, while also providing education to the staff and to the students, as well as being a visible presence.
Excellent. And Corporal Perez, how many years have you been with the department, and what do you do in your role with the neighborhood policing team?
I started with our department in 1997, so that's 25 years of service to the city that I've given. As a corporal with the neighborhood policing team, I'm responsible for the areas west of Patterson Road going out to the beach. Basically, I oversee the officers working in that area and make sure that we address problem areas or situations successfully so that we're not going to the same place day after day.
And I'll ask the same question to both of you. You can answer one at a time. But what are your memories of Red Ribbon Week growing up, and what does it mean to you now, and especially in the specific roles that you're serving?
So what I remember is events at school. You would wear red to represent the awareness. And it's basically, that's what it's for. It's to spread awareness of drugs and alcohol and the effects that it can have on your body.
My school time was a little bit longer than some of the others in this room. I remember getting started the Red Ribbon Week and taking the time to talk about what drugs do to our bodies. I was very fortunate. I was involved in sports, and that was more of a priority to me than dabbling in illicit substances. So I think that helped set that foundation for me not to get involved in those poor choices.
And I will once again extend the invitation to anyone watching. If you're watching us live here on YouTube and you have any questions for our officers, go ahead and ask them in the live chat here. And as long as we're together, we can answer any of the questions that you do have. Drugs, it's funny that, I mean, it's not funny, but there is an ongoing joke for people my age. It's drugs are bad, okay? And that's from a popular TV show. But it's just, I mean, it's a fact. It's true. Can you both touch on as any experiences or memories you have of dealing with drugs as a police officer, and why are they bad?
You know, I look back at my time as an elementary school, junior high, high school, and I really didn't see what drugs did to people. It was hidden, behind doors. But now, as society has changed, and I've done my career as a law enforcement officer, I could see on the streets the effects of the war on drugs, people living on the streets, unable to take care of themselves, self-medicating mental health problems with illicit substances. And it's a shame to see how much more pervasive it is in our society, the consequences of drug use.
Growing up, I actually saw the people that you might see on the street that act a little strange. I always thought that was very bizarre. And I learned that a lot of times it was because of drugs. And I was always aware of that, and it really bothered me. So as a police officer, seeing that up close and firsthand was definitely an experience for me. And I was able to learn a little bit more about what drug causes what kind of behavior or, health issues, why they look a certain way. Maybe they're missing teeth or have bad skin. And sometimes I like to ask, what got them started on using drugs. And it's interesting to hear everybody's story because everybody has a story.
And what is your advice to students out there when there will come a time when they're in a situation where they are offered drugs or faced with some sort of peer pressure? What would you say to those students?
I think the easiest thing is to already have a plan in place. For me, I blame my parents of why I wasn't allowed to do drugs. And once people get an answer that the answer is no, they tend to stop the questioning, stop the bothering. But I'm totally fine with people blaming it on me. Police Officer Perez said, don't do drugs. I can't do them because he said it. Blame somebody so that you can get yourself out of that situation before you end up making a poor choice.
Yeah, definitely. Don't be afraid to blame the adults in your life. They won't have a problem with it. And if you're a part of any sports activities, you can blame the sports. I need my body to run and function because I want to do well in this sport. I don't want to get in trouble at home. I don't want to lose my phone, whatever that might be to get you out of that situation, and then tell an adult so that they can help.
If there's ever a time in your life that you can blame your parents or blame a police officer when you're faced with drugs or being peer pressured, that is an ideal time for sure. I want to say hello to Mr. Gonzalez's grade 6 class at Blackstock. Thank you so much for joining us. And he's got a question from Giselle in his class. She wants to know if you like being a police officer.
I love being a police officer. It is a dream come true for me, and I am grateful to be here every single day because I get to have the front row seats to the best show on earth.
I never imagined myself at elementary school, junior high school of being a police officer. I thought I was going to be an electrical engineer, building robots, computers, things to that degree. And I got to say, I've been amazed at the good fortune that I ran into some officers that kind of explained to me what they did. And I fell in love with the job. And I look forward to every day to waking up to go to work, sometimes too much. But then later I was able to incorporate my electronic use into cameras. And now we have a UAV unit, which is like a drone. So it's definitely come full circle for me.
You touched on it a little bit and on what you did before you became a police officer. Officer Roberts, was being an officer always a dream for you? You said it was a dream come true, but is it something you always wanted to do, or?
No, I actually started my career path in special needs education, and I actually did that for 10 years. My journey wasn't to be a teacher. However, I did go to nursing school for a little while. And then that wasn't something that worked out for me. So the next thing I chose was another way to serve my community, and that was being a police officer.
Jordan in Mr. Gonzalez's class, they may have tuned in late. He wants to know how long you've been an officer, and if my memory is correct, it's 5 years for Officer Roberts and 25 for Officer Perez.
Yes,
correct.
Officer Perez, what did you do? I think you just mentioned it. Before you were a police officer, did you have another profession?
I worked for the post office out of high school.
Right, that's right.
My family worked there, so I had a lot of good friends in that community, and I was able to get a job right out of high school. But then I was going to college at that time, trying to pursue electronic engineering, like I mentioned earlier.
That is one thing that I has kind of blown my mind, and that's you always picture police officers as someone who wanted to do it from the earliest ages for as long as they can remember. But I meet so many officers that had a career before they became a police officer. And I think that's amazing, and something I like to remind everybody of. It's never too late to make a career change, to pivot. And what would both of you, I'll ask one by one, but what do you think is the most rewarding part of the job?
There's so many. I would say being able to be the person that might help and change somebody's life forever. And then making connections with kids is always my most rewarding experience.
The community connections to me have been the most important, but when I was in narcotics, I did undercover for 5 years. It was interesting seeing some people overcome the challenges of addiction. That was very rewarding. Still keep in touch with a few of those people. It was sad to see it wasn't more than I would thought. Majority of people actually fell back into use, unfortunately. And then in homicide, I did that for several years. It was nice to be able to present to the family what had happened when I was able to in those situations, because a lot of times there's just so many questions of why did we lose a loved one that we can't answer. But in a few of those occasions, I had the ability to explain why. So that was very gratifying.
All right, we have another question from Mr. Gonzalez's class. Thank you for the questions. And if you're watching and just tuned in, if you have any questions for our officers, please go ahead and add them to the live chat here on YouTube, and we will answer those as long as we're here with you virtually. Haziel, I hope I'm saying your name right. Haziel wants to know what drugs contain that are bad. So I guess it's kind of an overall, why are drugs bad for you question.
So at the end of the day, all drugs are chemical compounds, and it's how those compounds interact with our body as we ingest them, and how they either affect you by making you more energetic or more depressed, depending on what they're trying to achieve. We've mentioned in past meetings that a lot of the drugs were developed for medical reasons initially, and then they've been twisted to be used for illegal uses, and that's why they're now illegal and considered dangerous to human consumption.
I think one way to look at it is if you've ever, grabbed a household chemical and you see that it's not safe and you would have to call 911 if you ingest it, meaning swallow it, or get in your eyes or anything like that because it's unsafe. Well, a lot of times, for example, methamphetamine have these toxic chemicals. So would you drink a bottle of bleach? Hopefully not. And that's kind of the same thing as doing methamphetamine.
You mean it wouldn't clean all the bad stuff out of your body?
No, definitely not.
Heard that somewhere. Sorry, my brain is going so many different ways right now. Can you tell us about a time that you were working as a police officer and you saw or observed the effects or the negative ways that drugs affected someone's body specifically, or what it did to them physically?
I've had to use Narcan on someone that was suffering the effects of fentanyl.
What's that?
So Narcan is a substance we use to block the transmitters and receptors for use of opiates, be it heroin, fentanyl. I had a subject at a Subway shop go inside the store and pass out on them, and they're afraid he had some type of medical condition, which it became with his use of illicit drugs. Narcan is able to be given to the subject so that it stops them from their heart stopping in their lungs, from not being able to use the muscles to breathe in and out. And the chemical that we use called Narcan prohibits those things from happening, blocks the muscles from relaxing that much, and allows them to be revived.
Yeah, I have come across several people, obviously. One in particular that sticks with me because I asked her story. She is homeless on the streets, and that was a result of having a genetic medical issue that she had surgery on when she was a young teenager. So that surgery resulted her in using pain pills to manage, the surgery pain. After a while, she got addicted to those pills, and then those pills weren't enough for her. And then she began using street drugs, like methamphetamine, which also led her to do heroin, which led her to use fentanyl. And her brain is just not right anymore. She can't have a normal conversation. Every once in a while, she does have moments of clarity, like she did in this moment. I had a conversation with her, and it changed her entire life. And she has a child and that she never sees. So
All right. Once again, if you have any questions for our officers, go ahead and drop them in the live chat. Otherwise, we're just chatting amongst ourselves here. But thank you for including us in your Red Ribbon Week activities and scheduling some time to visit with us virtually with our police officers. I'd like to touch on just for a minute, Corporal Perez, you mentioned that you used to work in narcotics. Have you had any other assignments while you've been an officer here over your 25 years?
So I've worked with the neighborhood policing team, which is my current assignment. I've also worked with the major crimes unit, which is our homicide unit, for several years. The narcotics, as you mentioned. Currently, I'm assigned to our UAV team, which is our drone. I work on our first aid team, which is why I was one of those first Narcan users. I've had a couple of different assignments here. I'm on the bike team still. We use that as a tool for the neighborhood policing team. What else have I done? Explorers, reserves, a few things.
What are our explorers?
So explorers, are you on the explorer recruitment?
No.
Explorers are young adults under 21, but older than 14, I believe, that donate their time to work with law enforcement officers. They help us out with various events from the Strawberry Festival to the Dallas Cowboys parking. In exchange for that, we allow them to go on ride-alongs with officers, and they compete in competitions that are law enforcement driven. It's very amazing how dedicated they are to the community, without a doubt.
And a lot of the explorers who go through our program have dreams of becoming a police officer and then eventually do. I think we did the math like last week, like 18 of our current officers came from our Explorer program, which is great. So Corporal Perez mentioned a few different assignments that he has held, but let's talk about some other stuff that police officers do, our other units. Can you tell us a little bit about our traffic unit?
So our traffic unit are on motorcycles most of the time. Sometimes they're in vehicles. Their main job is traffic safety. So they will make sure that people are following the laws of the road, make sure that everybody's safe, as well as for certain events, they will block traffic and direct traffic.
What about these guys on horses?
We just recently added the mounted unit back to the police department. We had one years ago when I started. The officers use the horses mostly to meet with the community, but we do use them for crowd control situations, as they give an officers a higher viewpoint than a normal person standing on the street would have.
And what is a school resource officer?
So a school resource officer is an officer that is assigned to a campus or schools and will be present at the school and accessible for staff and students for questions or law-related issues, as well as just educating on lockdown procedures or any other concerns for school safety.
But sometimes you get to connect with the community, right?
Absolutely. Especially over the summer, we will often have soccer camp and we have basketball camp, and we are so fortunate to be able to be a part of those programs and get to play alongside the kids.
What about, and Corporal Perez just mentioned the bikes. Why do we have these bikes?
The bikes give us a different way to access parts of our community. Some areas are just walk paths that we can't drive a car to. Some alleys, it's easier to make access with the bicycle to get through. It allows us a different way to approach the problems that we have to deal with in law enforcement.
Speaking of different ways to approach problems, who's the goodest boy? What do our canines do?
Our canines are a tool that we have for any article searches or drug searches that we might have that might not be particularly safe for the officer to go in, or sometimes their little snout is able to sniff things out that we can't find.
And they work closely with our SWAT unit. What is our SWAT unit?
Our SWAT unit is primarily who we call out for barricaded subjects. They're well-trained officers that specialize in those type of situations. If you see, look in the background, you can see one of our Bearcats present. Mostly when it gets really bad, that's who shows up to help us solve the problem.
All right. That's a little little adventure into what else can police officers do on the job. Misfits Kamala 6th grade class has joined us, and she's got a question from her class. At what age can you become a police officer, and how long does it take to become one?
So currently it's 21 years of age with a high school GED equivalent. Laws are currently being amended, so now's the time to get in if this is what you look at doing. The state's looking at changing that to 25 years of age with a college degree as a minimum to get into law enforcement. Once you go through the process of applying for the department, you'll go through some interviews, written test, physical, psychological tests, and a few other steps. You'll get put into an academy, which lasts typically about 6 months. The academy teaches you the basics of the law, the more the concept of it, how it's done. They cover hand-to-hand tactics, car driving, firearm use, and civil and criminal law. But after that, then you move into the training program, which is almost another 6 months when you work one-to-one with an officer out in the streets doing what officers do.
And you typically have to be 21 to patrol. However, there are agencies that hire at 19. And those agencies are often the sheriff's office, because you're working inside the jail. And you once you turn 21, you can patrol the streets.
Gotcha. And so, yeah, usually it is like 6 months to apply. And then once you're hired, you go into the academy, which is another 6 months, and then you're in training for like 4 or 5 months, right? But it is all paid. So I mean, once you get hired, not the application, obviously, but once you're hired, obviously you get paid. If you have any other questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat. If not, we will bid y'all adieu and say thank you so much and have a great week. But Corporal Perez or Officer Roberts, do you have any words of advice, any last thoughts, as it is Red Ribbon Week, to any of our middle school students out there watching?
It's sad that we can be presented an opportunity to change our bodies with drugs and not realize the long-term consequences at the age group of the classes that we're visiting with today. And it's hard to see the long-term effects of how that will change your life if you make the wrong choice. I know we have all good friends that bring us into bad situations sometimes, and knowing the right answer and having it out is very important. I think that's the biggest thing I wish I would have taken away from Red Ribbon Week, is understanding that I can say no. I have the right to say no. It's my body, and I should say no if I want to do what's right for my body, because my body provides me everything I need, and it's a natural machine that's built just for me, and it works well just for me.
Yeah, make sure that you don't fall victim to peer pressure, and whatever that might be, blaming somebody or just making good choices on your friend groups. Make sure you listen to the adults in your life. Nobody is out to get you. Everybody is just trying to guide you and help you. So if there's a reason they're doing something and you don't understand it, just ask why, and they will explain.
If you ever have any questions about anything, ask your teachers, ask your parents, ask your neighborhood police officers. You've got support all around you from and the wisdom that these adults can share. And you will never find an adult that will tell you. I mean, you shouldn't ever find an adult that'll tell you not to say no. So, I mean, that's the big Red Ribbon Week takeaway. Just say no. Am I right?
Yep. Yeah. Just say no.
Definitely.
Well, thank you so much, Officer Roberts, for joining us, and Corporal Perez, and everybody out there on the live stream. Thank you for tuning in and making us part of Red Ribbon Week 2022. Hope you have a great rest of your day. And if you see us out and about, wave and say hello. Have a great day.